There is a moment every person who has ever kept a kitchen knows, and nobody likes to admit to. It is 2 in the morning, and you get up for a glass of water, and you flip on the light, and something dark and fast skitters behind the stove before your eyes have even finished adjusting, and your stomach drops clean to the floor. You do not sleep again that night. What I want to tell you is that there is a little brown bottle sitting in your medicine cabinet right now, probably behind something else, probably forgotten, that the pest control industry would be perfectly happy for you to go right on ignoring for the rest of your natural life. My name is Ruth Yoder. I keep house here with my husband and our 7 children, and between the cooking and the gardening and the root cellar and the hen house and the 7 children, I have had occasion to deal with just about every pest that the good Lord saw fit to put on this earth. Some of them I have made my peace with. Most of them I have shown the door. I was raised plain in a community where you do not reach for the telephone the minute something goes wrong in your house. You think first. You look at what you have. You remember what the women before you knew. My grandmother kept a household of 11 on a budget that would make your eyes water, and she never once signed a pest control contract in her life. Not because she did not have bugs. Lord knows she had bugs. But because she had something worth more than a contract. She had knowing. Now, I want to be honest with you right from the start, the way I always am, because honesty is the only thing that makes a video like this worth sitting down for. I am not going to tell you that 1 bottle of hydrogen peroxide will solve every pest problem you have ever had or ever will have. That would be the kind of thing a person says when they are trying to sell you something, and I am not selling you anything. What I am going to tell you is the truth about what this plain, cheap $1 bottle actually does, why it works, how to use it properly, and where its honest limits are. Because a thing oversold is a thing that fails you, and when it fails you, you stop trusting the person who sold it, and that is a poor trade. So pull up a chair. This is going to take a few minutes, and it is worth every one of them. What hydrogen peroxide actually is and why it works. Before we get into the roaches, and we are absolutely going to get into the roaches, I want to make sure you understand what you are actually working with when you pick up that little brown bottle, because once you see the sense of it, everything after will sit better in your mind. Hydrogen peroxide is water with 1 extra oxygen atom attached to it. That is the whole secret. 2 hydrogen, 2 oxygen instead of 1, and that extra oxygen is restless. It does not want to stay. The moment it touches something organic, something living or once living, it releases that oxygen in a rush. That is the fizzing you see. That is not a side effect. That is the whole mechanism. That fizz is oxygen being set free, and in the process of being set free, it tears apart the cell walls and the protective coatings of whatever it touches. Bacteria, fungi, mold spores, the eggs of insects, the waxy outer shell of a flea, the membranes of a roach egg case. All of them are vulnerable to that oxidizing action in a way that your countertop and your grout and your skin are not, at least not at the 3% concentration sold at any pharmacy for about $1. Now, I want to say something plainly about that 3%, because there are stronger concentrations of hydrogen peroxide out there, 35% food grade and higher, and I have seen videos telling people to use them around their homes, and I want you to hear me clearly on this. Do not. The 3% bottle from the pharmacy is the one you want. It is the one that does the job safely. The stronger concentrations can burn your skin, damage your eyes, and cause serious harm. There is no pest problem in your house that requires anything stronger than what you can buy for $1 next to the bandages at the pharmacy. Stronger is not always better. In this case, Stronger is dangerous and unnecessary, and my grandmother would have had very plain words for anyone who told you otherwise. Roaches. All right, the roaches. I will be honest with you. Of all the creatures that have ever made themselves unwelcome in a home, the cockroach is the one that unsettles people the most deeply, and I understand why completely. There is something about a roach that feels like an accusation, like the house is saying something unflattering about you personally. But here is the truth, and I want you to hold on to it. Roaches are not a judgment. They are an opportunity. They are telling you that something in your home, a crack, a moisture problem, a food source, is available to them. Close that availability, and they go find somebody else to bother. Here is why the spray from the hardware store fails you every single time. It kills on contact. You see the roach, you spray the roach dies, and you feel you have won something. But roaches do not live on your counter. They live behind the walls, inside the void under your cabinets, in the warm, dark space behind your refrigerator that nobody has looked behind since 1980-something. The spray never reaches those places, and one female German cockroach, the most common kind in American kitchens, produces an egg case holding 30 to 40 eggs every few weeks. You do that arithmetic, and you will understand why the spray feels like it is never quite working, because it is not. Peroxide is different because it changes the environment itself. Roaches need moisture the way the rest of us need air. A damp kitchen with old grease in the cracks is, to a roach, the finest real estate in the county. Clean that kitchen regularly with peroxide, and you are not just cleaning. You are making it inhospitable. Fill a spray bottle with straight 3% peroxide. Add 10 or 15 drops of peppermint oil if you have it, because roaches have a deep and abiding hatred of peppermint that I find genuinely satisfying. Spray the counters, the backsplash, the cabinet interiors, the baseboards, and the base of the stove and refrigerator. Then get into the cracks, the gap where the counter meets the wall, the space where the baseboard has pulled slightly away from the floor. Those are the roach highways. Get the peroxide in there and let it sit and fizz for 10 minutes before you wipe anything down. Under the sink gets its own special attention because it is almost always the dampest spot in the kitchen, and roaches know it better than you do. Spray the interior walls, the cabinet floor, and around every pipe. Any gap where a pipe enters the wall, stuff it with steel wool before you spray. The peroxide handles what is there. The steel wool closes the door. Do this weekly. A roach that finds your kitchen smelling of peroxide and peppermint with no moisture and no crumbs in the cracks is a roach making other arrangements. And if you are seeing roaches in daylight, that means the population behind the walls has grown crowded enough to push them out into the open. And at that point, please do call a professional. Knowing when something is bigger than your two hands is its own kind of wisdom. Ants. Now, I have talked about ants before, and I will keep this focused, because what I want to give you here is what peroxide specifically does to ants, and why it fills a gap that other methods leave open. When you see ants on your counter, they are following a scent trail, an invisible road laid down by the scouts before them, a chemical line that says, "Food is this way, walk here, tell everyone." Sprays kill the ants you see, but they do not always break that scent trail cleanly. And a scent trail that survives is an invitation that keeps working long after you have put the spray away. Hydrogen peroxide breaks down the pheromone compounds in an ant scent trail on contact. You spray it across the trail, you wipe it clean, and the chemical road is gone. The ants behind them have no map. They scatter, they wander, they lose the thread of where they were going. And a confused ant is, I am pleased to report, a much less effective ant. For ants on surfaces, mix 1 part 3% peroxide to 2 parts water in a spray bottle. Spray directly on any ants you see, along their trail, and across the entry point where they are coming in. Wipe clean. Repeat as needed. Now here is the honest truth about peroxide and ants that I will not gloss over, because I told you at the beginning I would not oversell this. Peroxide is a frontline defense. It handles what you can see. It disrupts the trails, it kills on contact, but if you have a colony established somewhere in or near your home, the peroxide alone will not reach the queen down in the dark, and the queen is the whole problem. For that, the old borax bait method is your answer, and those two things together, peroxide to clean the trails and disrupt the activity, borax bait to get into the nest itself, is about as complete a plan as a person can make without signing a service contract. What I love about peroxide in the ant fight is what it does after. Once you have cleaned the surface with it, that surface is inhospitable. It smells wrong to ants. The chemical markers they leave are gone, and if you make it a habit to wipe your counters and mop your kitchen floor with a diluted peroxide solution regularly, you are constantly erasing the map they are trying to draw. You are not fighting the ants so much as refusing to let them navigate. Fleas. I want to talk to you plainly about fleas because fleas are the one pest on this entire list that I have seen reduce otherwise completely capable women to sitting on the kitchen floor at 9 o'clock at night wondering where they went wrong in life. I have been that woman. I will not pretend otherwise, and the reason fleas win so consistently is not because they are particularly clever. It is because the products sold to fight them address half the problem, while the other half sits quietly in your carpet waiting for its turn. Here is what the shelf products are counting on you not knowing. The flea you can actually see on your dog or your cat represents about 5% of the total flea population in your home at any given moment. 5%. The other 95 are eggs, larvae, and pupae, living in your carpet fibers, your furniture cushions, along the baseboards, in the pet bed, in the rug by the back door, in places you are not looking, which is most places. You treat the animal, you declare victory, and 3 weeks later, every egg already laid in your carpet before you did a single thing hatches into a fresh generation, right back where you started, except lighter in the wallet. The wheel keeps turning because treating only the animal was never going to stop it. This is where peroxide does something the pet products genuinely cannot. Applied to the surfaces of your home, it goes directly after the eggs and soft-bodied larvae. The oxidizing action breaks down the proteins in the eggs and disrupts the larvae before they can develop further. Worked into a consistent routine, it helps break the hatching cycle in a way no flea collar ever touched. For carpets, mix equal parts 3% peroxide and plain water. Spray evenly, let it sit 10 to 15 minutes, then blot with a clean dry towel, damp fibers, not a soaking wet pad. Test a hidden corner first, because peroxide has a mild bleaching effect, and you want to discover that behind the sofa leg rather than in the middle of the sitting room. For bedding, pet beds, and any fabric near an infested animal, add a full cup of peroxide to your wash, along with regular soap on the hottest setting the fabric allows. $1 of peroxide doing the work of a $20 specialty treatment. I will take that trade every single time. And hear me plainly on this. Never put peroxide directly on your dog or your cat. It is not safe for animals. Your veterinarian handles the pet. Peroxide handles the home. Those jobs do not cross. Vacuum everything first. Every carpet, cushion, and baseboard. Seal the canister contents outside immediately. Then spray, then wash. Then repeat every few days for 2 to 3 weeks. Patience is the whole price of winning this one. And it is a price paid in time rather than money, which suits me just fine. Mice, cleanup, and deterrence. I want to spend some real time on this one because it is the section most people are not expecting when they sat down to watch a video about pest hacks, and it may be the most important thing I tell you today. If you have ever found evidence of mice in your home, the droppings along the back of a shelf, the gnawed corner of a cereal box, the little dark smear along a baseboard where they run the same road every night, your first instinct is probably to deal with the mouse, set a trap, call someone. And yes, dealing with the mouse is necessary. I am not here to tell you otherwise, but here is what most people do not think about, and what the health authorities, the actual ones who study these things professionally, want you to understand. The mouse itself is not the primary danger once it has been in your home. What it leaves behind is the droppings, the urine, and the nesting materials of certain mice can carry diseases that are genuinely serious. I am not going to list them all out because this is not a medical video and I am not a doctor, but they are not nothing and they are not cleaned away safely with a broom and a paper towel. Here is what the guidance says, and I follow it exactly. You do not sweep or vacuum rodent droppings. I know that is the natural thing to reach for, but sweeping sends contaminated particles up into the air where you breathe them in, and that is how the danger travels. You disinfect first. You disinfect thoroughly, and then you wipe up. Hydrogen peroxide is one of the best disinfectants you can use for exactly this job. It kills bacteria, it kills viruses, it kills fungi, and it does it without filling your kitchen with fumes while you are crouched under a cabinet trying to see what you are doing, which I appreciate more than I can say because I have cleaned under enough cabinets in my time to know that it is not a situation that benefits from added fumes. Here is the method, step by step, and please do not skip any of it. Put on rubber gloves before you touch anything. If you have a mask, put that on too. Then spray the droppings and the entire area around them thoroughly with 3% hydrogen peroxide straight from the bottle. Cover everything you can see and a good margin of space around it. Let it soak for at least 5 minutes. Then carefully, using paper towels, wipe everything up. Do not rub. Wipe gently and fold the towel inward as you go so the contaminated side stays inside. Put every paper towel directly into a plastic bag, seal it, and take it outside. Then spray the entire area again with peroxide and let it air dry without wiping. When you are done, take off the gloves inside out into the same bag, seal it, wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, and then go have a cup of something warm because you have earned it. Now, this cleanup method handles what the mouse left behind. Getting rid of the mouse itself, filling the entry points, setting traps, understanding how they got in, that is a separate job, and one where a licensed pest control professional is sometimes genuinely the right call. There is no shame in that. A mouse problem that has gone on long enough can mean structural entry points that need more than a roll of steel wool and a prayer. Know the difference between what you can handle and what needs a trained eye, and act accordingly. What peroxide gives you is the clean and safe starting point after the fact, and the clean and safe starting point is not a small thing. It is actually where the real health protection lives. General household pest prevention routine. Here is something my grandmother understood that I think about often. She never waited for trouble to arrive before she started managing it. The women who kept houses the old way were not reacting. They were maintaining. There is a very large difference between those two things, and that difference shows up in the pest situation most acutely. A home that is cleaned regularly with hydrogen peroxide as part of the ordinary routine is a home that is constantly disrupting the conditions pests need to establish themselves, and that is a far more efficient use of your time and your dollar than scrambling to address an infestation after it has already set up housekeeping in your walls. Here is the routine I use, and it is not complicated. It does not add much time to what you are already doing. Once a week, after your regular kitchen cleaning, wipe down your counters, your backsplash, and the inside edges of your cabinets with a cloth dampened with diluted peroxide, 1 part peroxide to 2 parts water. Pay particular attention to the corners and the gaps. Get into the crease where the counter meets the wall. Get under the edge of the stove hood. Those are the places bugs evaluate first when they are deciding whether your kitchen is worth moving into. Once a week, pour about half a cup of straight 3% peroxide down each of your kitchen and bathroom drains. Let it sit for 30 minutes before you run water. This keeps the organic buildup from forming inside the drain, and that buildup is the breeding ground for drain flies and a contributing factor to roaches being attracted to that area. A clean drain smells like nothing, and nothing is what you want your drains to smell like. Mop your kitchen floor with a solution of 1 part peroxide to 4 parts warm water. Bugs, and roaches especially, red the floor. They travel along it. They assess it chemically. A floor that has been cleaned with peroxide is a floor that gives them very little information to work with and very little invitation to stay. Spray along your baseboards, inside your cabinet toe kicks, and around the frames of any door that leads to the outside. Once a week if you are dealing with an active problem. Once every 2 weeks for maintenance once things are calm. This is not a dramatic intervention. It is the same quiet consistency my grandmother applied to everything she kept. A garden weeded every week stays a garden. A garden weeded once a season becomes something else entirely. The house is the same. What the pest control industry doesn't want you to know. I want to be careful here because I have heard people on videos like this talk about the pest control industry as though there is a room somewhere with a long, polished table where men in suits sit around and plan how to keep you ignorant, and I do not think that is what is happening. The truth is stranger than that, and to my mind more worth understanding. Nobody had to plan for you to forget what your great-grandmother knew about keeping a clean and pest-free house with plain materials. Nobody coordinated that forgetting. It just happened, a little at a time over the better part of a century. As the products got cheaper to manufacture and easier to market, and the knowing got easier to set aside because there was always a new bottle on the shelf that promised to do the work for you faster and with less thinking. Walk yourself down the pest control aisle of any grocery or hardware store and count the products. There are sprays for roaches and sprays for ants and sprays for fleas and foggers and traps and granules and plug-in devices and on until your eyes blur. Turn them around and read the labels. They are variations on a handful of chemical compounds, dressed up in different colors, given different names, priced at amounts that add up to a great deal of money over a year of buying them regularly. And then there are the service contracts, the quarterly visits, the spring treatment and the fall treatment, and the call us if you see anything between times. A family that signs one of those contracts and keeps it for 10 years can spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or more on pest control across that decade. For bugs, for the same bugs that a $1 bottle of peroxide and a $4 box of borax and about 20 minutes of your time every week can manage as well or better for the ordinary household. The $1 solution is not what gets advertised. There is no profit in it, and so nobody is out there buying time on the television to remind you that the bottle in your medicine cabinet already does most of this. The system does not need a conspiracy. It only needs silence. And in the silence, the forgetting does its own work. This is what I mean when I say the knowing is worth more than the things. The things can be taken from the shelf and replaced with something else. The knowing travels with you. It goes from mother to daughter and grandmother to grandchild and does not need an advertisement to stay alive. It only needs someone willing to say it out loud. Cautions, warnings, and honest limits. I will not send you off without this section because leaving it out would be the same kind of dishonesty as overselling the thing in the first place. The 3% peroxide from the pharmacy is gentle in the way that genuinely useful things usually are. But gentle does not mean without limits, and I want you to know those limits before you go. Never mix hydrogen peroxide with vinegar. I mean that absolutely. Together they produce something called peracetic acid, which throws off fumes that will hurt your airways, your eyes, and your skin. They are both fine things used separately on different days. Together they are not fine at all. Never together. Keep it away from your eyes, and if it gets in them, rinse with clean water for a good few minutes. Do not let small children get into it. At 3% it is not going to cause a catastrophe, but it will cause enough unpleasantness that you will wish you had put it up higher on the shelf. I say that knowing most of you already know it, and saying it anyway because that is just how I am. On dark fabrics, colored carpets, and stained wood, Test a hidden corner before you commit to the whole surface. Peroxide has a mild bleaching effect, and while 3% is not dramatic about it, some dyes are more sensitive than others, and a 30-second test is always worth your while. Store it with the lid on in a cool, dark place, which is why it already comes in that brown bottle. A bottle left open on a bright windowsill since sometime last year has likely broken down into plain water and will not do a thing for you. When you are not sure, pour a little on a surface and watch for fizzing. No fizz means no potency. And the plainest limit of all. If the infestation you are looking at is large, established, and structural, the peroxide is part of your response, not the whole of it. There is no shame in knowing when a job has grown past what one bottle can manage. My grandmother was the most capable woman I ever knew, and she was also the first to say so. So here is what I want you to do before this week is out. Go and buy 1 bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide if you do not already have one sitting in your cabinet. It costs about $1. Mix up a simple spray bottle with 1 part peroxide and 2 parts water and go through your kitchen with it. Wipe the counters and the cabinet corners and along the baseboards and pour a little down the drain. Do it once and see what you think. And then come back down to the comments and tell me 2 things. Tell me what county you live in and tell me how old your house is, because the old houses carry their pest troubles differently than the new ones do, and the hard water and the old pipes and the settled foundations each make a different kind of invitation to a different kind of creature. I read every comment you leave down there, every single one, and the things you teach me from your own kitchens and cellars and back porches I could not learn any other way. My grandmother used to say that a clean house is not a house that has never seen trouble. It is a house that knows how to handle it. I hope this gives you a little more of that handling. Take good care of each other. God bless.